For more than a year now, they've been putting them together.
You still want 7/16?
Piece by piece. Volunteers, pilots, retired aircraft specialists, all along for this historic ride, building from the ground up not one, but two historical World War I aircraft.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Guys like Peter Graham.
They're the boss. 3 or 4 months, we've been coming in 4 or 5 days a week. For a retired guy.
Or Bruce Paulington, who spent his career at Air Canada. Theirs is a labor of love, an act of remembrance.
Because of, especially with World War I, you're getting the 100 years, so it's sort of like people think you're sort of getting forgotten a little bit.
But it's when you put them all together, holding their pictures of personal history, of loved ones lost, that you get a real sense of what this project is all about.
My grandfather, Walter John Jenkins.
It's my great-uncle Bill, who was killed at the Second Battle of Ypres.
My grandfather, Henry Pollington, he was in the Essex Regiment in the British Army.
This is my grandfather, Donald John MacDonald, and he was killed at Loos.
Alan Snowy had 5 relatives who served. This is his grandfather, Joseph.
One of 5 Snowies that went to war, the only one that came home.
All set?
Pilot Snowy has 40 years on his wings as a former Naval and Air Canada pilot. He's taking up the Sopwith Cub. This morning, he's off for a taste, just a taste, of what those early flyboys went through.
There's not a lot to it, is there?
No, there's not.
Former jet fighter pilot Al French will take up the SE-5A. The young lads who flew them a century ago, clearly on his mind.
Some of them went to the front lines with only 8 hours of flying experience, flying these things, so, between the 10 pilots that are involved in this, we've got 250,000 flying hours between us.
Okay, Captain, sir.
Aye, sir.
This morning, they are stepping back, or more appropriately, flying back 100 years to remember those days leading up to the most important battle in Canada's young life as a country. In those early days of April 1917, leading up to the Battle of Vimy Ridge, the skies over the French countryside were already a bloody killing field, as Canadians like famed ace Billy Bishop and Joe Fall, a highly decorated pilot from Vancouver Island, found themselves dogfighting for their lives with the Germans, trying to figure out troop movement on the ground, trying to gain air superiority over what would become the battlefield. In the 1 week before Vimy Ridge, the Royal Flying Corps lost 131 aircraft, shot out of the sky by outnumbered German pilots. This morning, with a very narrow weather window of opportunity, they lift to the skies. These planes were developed and built barely a dozen years after the Wright brothers made history with the first flight. This morning, they're a sight to behold in the air over Langley. Performing flawlessly. Which is not to say they didn't have a few issues of their own to work out. Let's call them World War I ghosts, as recently as January.
What happened?
Well, the first test flight, the engine didn't perform the way it should, and it coughed and choked.
The engine was a problem. This is not their plane, but on YouTube you can find examples of what can happen when a similar situation occurs. The pilot in this case was okay, but it could have ended like this for pilot Snowy, but didn't. Thanks, if not to the engine, to his skills, getting the Sopwith pup back on the ground safely.
And what kind of engine was that?
Oh, it was a It was in.
You don't want to say it.
No, because really, we're going to be going back to the manufacturer and saying, here's your engines back.
But it was a German engine.
Yeah, all right, I didn't want to say that either, but ironic, yes. They're still shooting us down.
I bet you've had a few jokes about that.
I'm afraid so, yes.
Now there are brand new engines, and tens of thousands of volunteer hours later, their project is right on the edge of realization.
About 6 feet.
Very exciting for volunteer 25-year-old Karina Bacher, who just completed her first solo flight.
And I couldn't even imagine learning to fly on planes like this, and then not just learning to fly, but going through the war conditions and having people shooting at you. I'm glad nobody shoots at me while I'm flying around.
Joking aside,
Damn it, Jim, this is serious.
they are all very proud of their Canadian tribute to the aerial battle of Vimy Ridge 100 years later. Museum Vice President Dave Arnold.
But it's all working out.
It is, you know, it's been a challenge, a big challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But as one gentleman put it to me, it's also an honor.
Indeed. You know, it's when I'm walking around just looking at things or being part of this and seeing the guys out there with their photos today, you know, it just kind of gets you, you know. So, yeah,
There you go.
it's important stuff.
And remember Joe Fall, the highly decorated pilot from British Columbia? He survived Vimy, survived the war. Not that he was proud of what he had to do.
He had 36 victories, or kills if you want to be bloody about it. He was not proud of that. His son said he always, if everybody asked him what he did during the war, he says, I murdered some rather nice young men.
The Sopwith pup is painted in his colors. His sisters' names adorn the sides. Larger military aircraft gave the planes a ride across the Atlantic, and pilot Alan Snowy will be carrying a little piece of Fall's gear with him this weekend.
If it could talk, who knows?
His original flying leather helmet from that fateful battle.
It'll be there with
It'll
you.
be in the cockpit with me, absolutely. Oh, yes.
Wow.
The next time these fighters will be seen in the air is in the skies over Vimy Ridge in France. Red Sharon, CBC News in Langley, British Columbia.